So, it is now the beginning of January, and we've just had some really heavy rains that have gone continuously for about 3 days now. And as you can see, water is starting to pool up around in certain areas where it pools up every yearly. These are called seasonal water spots. And this is a protected region, this particular patch right here, for the spadefoot toads. And I know you can find them in April, kind of doing similar things in water as normal frogs would do, kind of floating around and whatnot. But I didn't know what they would do during the winter rainy months because it's a lot colder. It's about 55 degrees right now, and I'm sweating because I've been looking for these things for about 2 hours now. But what I can say is that I found out something about their behavior that I did not quite expect. And it's kind of interesting because you can see along the edges of this water pool how there's like all these reeds and whatnot. They're actually all lined up along the edges of this water source. And they're just kind of like chilling. They're literally just kind of meandering around in the water. Sometimes you'll see them pop up and float around. Most of the time, you're seeing them kind of hunker down in these little like, kind of like areas they've made for themselves. They've kind of like wiggled their little bottoms into the reeds, in which case they just kind of hang out. And I think it's because it's so cold out here, water holds better heat. And as we can see right here, they're very slow. This one's quite actually large, but they're very slow. It's because it's so cold here that it's very hard for them to move. Of course, being amphibians, they rely on the temperature. He's pretty cold. And I just stuck my hand in the water. The water was pretty cold, and my foot's also wet from exploring and looking around for these ones. But they're very cold. They don't really know what's going on, but they've got really pretty eyes. They're still very much awake, but probably just staying in the water to keep as warm as possible. And that's a, what is that, American tree frog or Southern California tree frog? Those croaking sounds are to kind of single out which one's the healthiest individual. Females will pick a male based on the sound, kind of like the tone of the voice that they have. And so the louder the call, the more likely they are to get a mate. These ones have more of a chirping sound. It's very hard to hear these ones amongst those chorus frogs, but these are by far my favorite ones we have here. Absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna put it back before it gets too cold. Now, despite this cold water temperature, they actually are using this as a nursery. Now, what they do is they lay their eggs against these dead kind of reeds that you're seeing in that are growing throughout the pool. And because these eggs are kind of sticky when they're first laid, they stick immediately to the other eggs and form this kind of like wrap around the stem of the plant. And so it's really quite hard to see these because it's kind of like a very foggy white kind of circle with a very small kind of brownish dot in the middle. And that is a spadefoot egg. It's much larger than one of the chorus frog eggs, which you are constantly hearing right now. So that's how we know kind of like which one's which. Because all frog eggs somewhat look the same, or at least they're pretty similar in their consistency. The only difference is the size and kind of the amount. Spadefoots, from what I'm seeing, is that there's not a lot that are stuck to each individual stem, but there's quite a bit in a certain area. Like there will be like 5 stems that have like around 5 or 6, maybe 4 or 3, depending on kind of how large the stem is. But it's really quite interesting how even in this cold temperature, they're still laying eggs. I wouldn't quite expect that. Now, it makes me wonder whether they're still laying eggs throughout our season of rains, because it starts from December, it goes kind of on until around June in some cases. So I wonder if they're laying eggs consistently throughout that time frame. And if that's the case, that would explain why their numbers are so low, because they don't have a designated breeding range or breeding time. They're kind of like putting out a little babies every once in a while, and that's getting eaten by predators, or the habitat loss is just not sustainable, in which case they would start to die off more rapidly. But it's really quite fascinating. I did not expect that they would all just kind of be lined up around the shallow parts of this pool. I've seen 3 of them doing this, and then there was one out in the center area, kind of just hanging out. Cool stuff.